Thank you so much. I'm happy to see that we have some viewers who are following. All right. So we're just going to get straight to it. Right. So I'm joined by Blessing Shuro. She's from Zimbabwe, and she is the founder of. She's going to tell us more about the work that she does. But right before we do that, I would like to um, give a brief explanation of what we're going to be talking about today, right? So the Sustainable Development Goals are founded on the principles of leaving no one behind, right? And um, in this regard, our program is going to focus on really how children can be mainstreamed in the discussion, right, on sustainable development, um, and really segue into the defined role that children can play, right? So, Blessing, I would like to give you the platform for you to introduce yourself and tell us more about the work that you do before we segue into the leading question.
Okay, so my name is Blessing and I'm from Zimbabwe and I'm a founder of an organization called AUDRRAR. So it stands for Africa United for Disaster Reduction, Research Advocacy. So with AUDRRAR, what we're basically doing is that our mandate is that our main niche is on research and advocacy. Those are our main tools which we use and which we're trying to help in terms of disaster reduction. So when we're talking about disaster reduction, we're talking about, for example, right now we're in a disaster, the COVID-19 pandemic. So in a way, we're trying to see how best we can use research and advocacy in a way in which we're able to reduce the disasters that are actually happening within the pandemic so that we're able to help not only people in general, but also children included as well. So one of the things we did on one of our projects is that we interviewed a young man with a disability. So his disability could have been prevented if he had gotten a vaccination. So in the end, he's now using a wheelchair. And I know that during COVID, I think it was on BBC, they were saying that because of the pandemic, maybe most children won't be vaccinated. So that's something that's going to be another disaster that's happening. If children are not going to get vaccinated, especially those who come from strong religious beliefs or superstitions, they end up not again getting vaccinated. So in the end, we're not able to prevent such disabilities. So imagine with the disaster that's happening right now with the pandemic of COVID-19, there's going to be maybe an increase in children with disabilities if they don't get vaccinated. So that's something I'm trying to raise awareness on as well as an organization. Thank you. I think I'm done talking. I'm not sure. Hello? Hello. I think I'm done talking. I think we've just lost Panashe right now because of the network. So I'm now not sure what's next or who's next to come in, unless if there's anybody else who wants to be introduced.
Some really insights really into the issues of how the COVID-19 pandemic has really affected the rights of children and what impact that has had on them and the work that you've been doing as well. Right. Thank you to our viewers for being very patient with us, experiencing some network glitches here and there, but we're going to get to going with the conversation, right? So in this panel, we're also joined by His Excellency, the Child Governor of Belize, um, Ishmael Nicholson, and he's also been doing some impactful work in South America, and he's going to tell us briefly about the work that he does. And we're also joined by Kartik Verma. He is the founder of Knowledge for Nature, and has been doing some work as well in the area of child rights activism. So they're going to tell us briefly about the work that they do, right? So that we can get started, right? Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. We have been working from 2019 with the Children's Parliament with children rights, basically working with the CRC, the Convention on the Rights of a Child. Alongside that, I have been fortunate to meet many young people and work alongside them. Um, I'm currently the Governor General of the Belize Children's Parliament. I also currently working with the Commonwealth Youth Peace Ambassadors Network, which is a group promoting peace among children and works with the entire Commonwealth. And I am currently the country coordinator for Belize. We are working and striving for peace within our community, our country, the Commonwealth, and the world. And I work along with many youths in different areas such as peace building, youth in leadership, climate change, and the sustainable development goals. That sums up about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. This I think he's facing some network issue, so I must continue. So my name is Kartik Verma and I'm from India and I belong from a very small town which is popular for its carpets. And I am a young climate and human rights activist working to make people aware regarding their nature, environment, and basic rights. So when I started, there was my target audience were children because me too, I am very young and I was not knowing much more about my rights and how to have an access and authority in the society. So during lots of research, as few questions were given to us that what are the child rights and why do matter. So, to the question which I researched and I experienced is that child right doesn't mean it doesn't have any boundaries, it doesn't have any boundation. such as the earlier speaker was speaking about vaccine equality. So I think it's my honor to be vaccinated. But in rest part of the world, there are still discrimination. This can be considered as well as I think uh, climate justice, juvenile justice, and early age marriage, child labor. There are lots of problems regarding child right, and I'm just directly speaking to the point because there was shortage of time and it was too late. But no problem. And so we are having lots of problem all over the world, but what I have faced is in my surrounding, in my society, and I am much clear, and there are several I think law and policies to protect them, but still we are far away from our goals. So we need to become more aware about our rights, and so that's the work which I'm doing. So that's all. Thank you.
Yeah. I noticed our first topic is what are children's rights, and to me, children rights are an umbrella under human rights with particular attention, special protection, and care for children. That's that's my sound of children rights.
Maybe you might want to take this one first. All right. I think there's a network. Right. Right. So I think we were just touching base on children's rights. Blessing, would you like to maybe share what children's rights are all about?
Okay. So let me not switch on the video just in case the network doesn't get me into trouble again. So what I can tell people about children's rights is that children's rights are basically the rights that both protect the children from harm, first and foremost, and secondly, they ensure that they grow and develop to fulfill their true potential. So from the international law, both the CRC, which is the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the one we have in Africa, which is the African Charter on the Rights of the Welfare of the Child, they say that the child somehow means they are sort of like they're like any human being, and they're below the age of 18 years. So when I was looking at the children's rights, I noticed that when I was reading through it, both the CRC and the one for the African Charter, yes, they do speak on the rights of the child, but they touch less on the rights of the child with a disability, which is something I noticed it's a gap. And I think it's something that would need, I hope I'm not going a bit further, because I know in one of the questions there was something about what can policymakers do? And one of the things I'd like to highlight on children's rights is that it would be good to have a convention or a treaty that's mainly focusing on children with disabilities. And I think in a way, it would make it clear on what are their rights and what are the things they're facing which need to be fixed. So that's basically what I can say about children's rights, but I think it's too biased on children who don't have disabilities. But it would be good to have a treaty that focuses also specifically for children with disabilities, the same way we had to do as Africa, that we also had to create our own charter so that it fits in with our own culture, according to what we say about children's rights. Because you do find with the African Charter on the Rights of the Wealth of the Child, it sort of imposes duties on the children on how they're supposed to behave, in as much as we do have our rights for health and education and all of that. The African Charter basically is trying to impose the duties on the child, that they need to respect their parents, they need to do their duties, they need to do all of that. So yeah, that's basically what I can say about children's rights.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, Blessing, and really for taking way into some of the existing gaps within the frameworks that we have for the protection of children's rights, right? And we're going to come right back to that, and I'm happy that you did touch base on the protection of children with disabilities, and that's something that you're going to come right back to. Ishmael, would you like to talk more about the provisions that guarantee the protection of the rights of children? Would you tell us more about the Convention on the Rights of Children, and really tell us your understanding of children's rights?
Yes, the Convention on the Rights of a Child, it is an important agreement by countries who promise to protect children's rights. And the convention explains who children are, all their rights, the responsibilities of the government, and all the rights connected. All the rights, they're all equally important, and they cannot be taken away from children. And the Convention of the Rights of a Child, it is 54 rights, and these articles explain how governments, the United Nations, including the Committee on the Rights of a Child and UNICEF and other organizations, work to make sure all children enjoy all their rights. That is a brief summary on the Convention on the Rights of a Child.
Okay. Thank you for segueing into the Convention on the Rights of the Children. Right. Blessing, you did touch base on the impact of COVID-19 and gaps that it has created, and you have also touched on really the silence that policymakers and established frameworks, the silence, their stance, their lack of will, maybe if I can put it that way, really to pay attention to the needs of children with disabilities, right? So can we segue into the multiple ways in which children's rights are being violated, and why this continues to happen? And I think already we've identified some of the gaps, but in what other ways are children's rights being violated? Are these entitlements being violated, and what impact does this violation have?
Okay. It's really sad that it still is continuing, especially for children with disabilities and children without disabilities. But there's a quote by Albert Einstein. He had a learning disability, but he managed to be one of those people whom was a genius and did a lot of things within the science field. And he said the statement in quotes, "No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it." So what he's basically trying to say is that the mindset that we have towards children's rights, or be it children with disabilities, that same mindset or the belief or the attitude, the beliefs we have or the attitude or whatever it is we've already put in our minds, it makes it very difficult to help children in terms of trying to reduce or trying to eliminate child marriages, because someone might have this religious belief within their mindset that it is their right to marry a young girl. But scientifically, we know that you cannot marry a young girl because biologically she cannot be able to carry a child to a certain stage in which she'll be able to give birth in such a way that the child will survive. So that's one of the things I realized from Albert Einstein, is that you'll still find that even those children who are not born with the disabilities, they may end up suffering from that child abuse, and then they end up becoming the perpetrators, because later on they're going to grow up with that same mindset, and they're not going to be able to change. The cycle just continues because they think it's normal. So I think for me, the main issue is the mindset. And if the mindset can be changed, then that would be great. And as the philosopher Confucius said, is that if you want to plan for something for 1 year, you can just plant rice. But if you want to educate someone, it's going to have to take 100 years. So know in what ways we can be able to reduce the violation of children and how to reduce it, but it's going to involve a lot of education and awareness to reduce it.
Yes. Thank you.
But
Thank
I think let me say it. Yes.
I understand you're about to say something.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say the quote of the philosopher, the Chinese philosopher Confucius. He says, if your plan is for 1 year, plant rice. If your plan is for 10 years, plant trees. If your plan is for 100 years, educate children. But I think that it can be shortened in less than 100 years, since we have a target of the 2030 SDG goals. I think because of the technology era we're in the information, it's about how best can we reach to a lot of people to raise this awareness in such a way that we know by 2030 that most people would be educated in such a way that there'll be less violation of children in such a way.
Thank you so much for sharing. We've really taken a lot from what you've just shared, and I also love how you segue into the change of mindset, the much needed change in mindset that we need, and is one of, I think, the sustainable solution to really tackling this this issue, right? And Ishmael, would you like to share from your own point of view, how can we tackle and limit the violation of children's rights?
Well, I think children, how can we tackle this limitation is by working with our local groups. We have to start locally before we can go large. So I recommend that we work with our NGO groups or our local government, because they are organizations within our country that help fight for children's rights. And one of the main organization is UNICEF. And UNICEF surely will help children to fight, and if they have a cause. I have these, how can we achieve sustainable development goals with children? One is awareness.
Okay.
With the right tools and information, children and young people can play a critical role in implementation and monitoring of the
Yeah.
SDGs, and that can
Yeah.
spark action in their community and holding the government or holding leaders to account.
Yeah. Okay.
And the second one is action.
Okay.
You know, there are millions of children and young people becoming aware of the goals. More and more are
Yeah.
taking action across the globe. So, committing to acting from health to
Yeah.
education to protect children's rights. Um,
Yeah.
UNICEF, like I mentioned again, UNICEF work is to guide by the SDGs. And the
Yeah.
last one, which is accountability, where global
Yeah.
leaders must be held to account on commitments they made. And again,
Okay.
UNICEF help do this in two ways: by collecting and analyzing and sharing data on children to monitor
Okay.
progress, and the second, by bringing children perspective on SDGs to discuss markers to promote accountability. Again,
Okay.
in every scenario you hear in those three: in one, awareness; two, action; and three, accountability, youths are being involved. And I think youth
Mm.
should be getting involved in the daily aspect of decision making. They should be at the decision table, and that's how we can tackle this crisis. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Your Excellency. You did touch on global organization, and you touched on some of the work that these organizations have been doing. Now, just a follow-up question. Do you feel that world leaders are doing enough, right? And really, when we talk about sensitive social ills such as such as the protection of children's rights, I think one of the tools that can be helpful really is to assess the situation that is on the ground, right? Maybe to be more specific, I would say over the years we've realized that um, the rights of children have continued to be violated. For example, in Zimbabwe, we have had about two recent cases of child marriage, right, and complications that have resulted from that. And also, in the global stage, you hear of so many stories: children being abducted, children being recruited into child armies, and so many things, right? So, from your own perspective, do you feel that world leaders are doing enough? Right? Do you feel that the current existing frameworks that we have, for example, the CRC, which you touched base on, do you feel that it is enough?
Well, I don't feel that world leaders are doing enough to protect children's rights. And the reason why we can see that all over the world, even especially in our developing countries, even in developed countries, there are child rights being broken. And one on the CRC, I believe the CRC is a foundation. It is not just where we're going as a goal, it's the foundation where all countries should establish the CRC. And from there, build better laws and pass better legislation to protect children's rights. That's my point on the CRC.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Now, the other speaker also touched on the rights of children with disabilities. Would you like to share your opinions on that? How do you feel that this issue should be approached? In what
Oh,
ways can we start realizing that much needed change?
okay. Um, to be really honest, it's a very sensitive topic because in as much as we do want the government to get involved, there seem to be some delays. And like I said before, it's all because of the mindset. So because of their beliefs on certain things, it ends up delaying, and in the end, you'll find more and more girls are being taken into child marriages. But I've also realized that these girls, though they're not born with disabilities, they end up having invisible disabilities, which may become psychiatric. They may end up having depression, bipolar, because of those experiences of not going to the hospital to give it. They may end up having some sort of trauma, and some of them end up getting issues of high blood pressure and stroke. But in the end, you'll find that maybe a part of a body gets disabled and all of that. So in a way, what I would rather say, the approach would be maybe starting small and trying to solve these issues. Yes, it's good to involve NGOs and everything, but you'll find that sometimes NGOs are not given the platform to protect those rights to a certain extent in which they can fully do it. So it's more about taking a diplomatic approach. And I don't know if you've heard the word, the terminology cultural diplomacy. So it's a type of public diplomacy in which you use some sort of a soft power. So it includes the exchange of ideas, information, art, language, and any other aspects of culture. So in a way, you're sort of fostering people to have a mutual understanding. So for example, right now, this is a form of a cultural diplomatic, this is a sort of a form, this platform is a way in which we're trying to use cultural diplomacy, in which we know that in as much as we're speaking, we know that there are certain leaders who will be listening to us, and they may be able to take 1 or 2 points from what we're saying. And the greatest part about cultural diplomacy, that it allows the establishment of constructive dialogue and creation of a positive change for a country. So in a way, it's like we're able to speak at a level in which we're sort of having a dialogue with our leaders, but not sort of trying to challenge them. It's just a soft power at the end of the day, in which we're able to come to a place in which we're able to say, okay, what needs to be done? What is actually needed to improve the violation of children? So one of the projects we're trying to do as AUDRRAR is that we've got a project in which we're trying to keep the names of children or people, any kind of people who've been victims of abuse, alias, but still being able to speak in such a way that in the end, people are able to understand, okay, this is the volume of the abuse that's happening. How best can we prevent it? And I also find that at times it's good to take the prevention aspect when you're trying to tackle such a very sensitive topic of violence. When I'm saying prevention, it goes back to what we were talking about with Ishmael and yourself, that trying to raise awareness, trying to educate people, and trying to prevent these same young people who are victims so that they don't become perpetrators, but they also become those people who are able to prevent that violation. So at times, the convention can help at times to reduce the violation to a certain extent. But you'll find because of the cultural differences in each and every country, especially for developing countries, because we still hold on to certain beliefs and we're not able to improve. So in a way, we just need to just take the diplomatic way of prevention, just try to raise as much awareness as we can, because trying to challenge it by using justice, in a way, it ends up delaying the process. So sometimes I think prevention is better than cure, because trying to curing the issue might come a bit too confrontational, and the violation doesn't end.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much. Those are really some insightful and profound recommendations which you have just made there. And just maybe to add maybe a little, Ishmael, what do you think that young people, what role can young people play in this fight? And what can children as well, what can children do, right? What role can they play? Because I think this is an an issue that is centralized on them, right? And I think Blessing also touched base on the importance of education, the importance of awareness, right? Maybe you'd like to add some of your perspectives as well to that.
Yes, thank you. Youths, children, they can take the forefront of this fight. They're not only the future, they are the present at the moment, and they are what
Yeah,
the children are what matters. And as I always say, children, children, children. It is always
yeah,
for the children.
yeah.
Whatever decision is made, it at the end of the day, it will affect children, no matter what.
Mm,
It is. So they can take action by voicing their opinions, and
okay,
that is the main thing. They need to be vocal. They need to
okay,
take on leadership roles. They need to show that, you know what, children mean business. Children, you know what, we're ready. But not only that, but speaking to parents, to
yeah,
people in the community,
yeah,
simple as teachers. Children meet with teachers on a daily basis, almost their entire
yeah,
life. Speaking up,
yeah,
asking question, getting involved, being hands-on. It is
yeah.
important, and I believe that children, like as I say, children at the forefront. That is the most important thing.
Okay, okay. Thank you for sharing, Ishmael. That was really insightful. Blessing, I think you did touch also on some of the work that you've been doing as AUDRRAR, right? In this fight,
Yes.
and yeah, some of your recommendations. What would be your word of advice to other non-governmental organizations and other change makers who are out there, who are ready to take action? What would you advise them? And really, I think there are also other organizations who have been having those discussions, but they might also feel that maybe it's not really going to amount to anything really, all of their efforts. So what would be your word of advice to change makers out there who are taking action already, and those who are looking forward to taking action? What would you advise them?
I'll mainly advise them on the area I just talked about, cultural diplomacy. If they can do
Okay.
more research on it and see how best they can apply it, because when you do apply it, you're sort of a cultural diplomat. The way you are presenting your organization as the conscientization movement to me, and
Yeah.
also Ishmael's position in which he's also trying to help children's rights, and me also
Yeah.
with my organization. The advice I can
Yeah.
tell them is that if they can really start looking at what is cultural diplomacy, in a way,
Okay.
sometimes if you use that soft power tool, you'll find that
Yeah.
maybe the efforts you're trying to do, you'll starting to have some improvements. And I think in a way it'll help in terms of mindsets, because
Okay.
at the end of the day, if I think such a tool can help change makers and NGOs to be able to change the mindset of people's strong beliefs and attitudes towards
Mm.
children's rights.
Mm.
So that's something I can just say about it all. And I
Yeah.
think what else? But I just wanted to add something on
Yeah.
cultural diplomacy. On cultural diplomacy, they've got different tools they use, but one of the ones which I liked most is social media, because social
Okay.
media is sort of a form of advocacy. So
Yeah.
if one of the change makers, be it its children, they have
Yeah.
to use social media in a way to make it fun, and maybe
Okay.
trying to do some skits, some
Yeah.
videos on which they talk about children's rights, and
Yeah.
making it intergenerational. So with
Ah.
cultural diplomacy, you're trying to involve all generations to speak on what their views are about children's rights and what they think needs to be done to improve it better.
Yeah.
So I would like to take an example. It's just storytelling I just need to do, but I think it's something that can help change makers and NGOs. I remember my aunt was at church. She was saying that there was this issue in which young people were complaining. I know they're not children, but it's just an example. That they graduate, they get their degrees or whatever qualifications, they now struggle to get those jobs. Then you find the parents are putting so much pressure on them to get jobs that it ends up affecting their mental health. That one of them had to go to one of the spiritual leaders and tell them, okay, I'm having such and such a problem in which my parent is giving me a lot of pressure. She told me that the leader, which was something I would never expect, the leader ended up telling the congregation members that, I think parents, the pressure you give on your adult children, in a way, you are sort of affecting their mental health. Don't put too much pressure on them. They know what they're trying to do. So in a way, if you find a young sort of religious pastor who is actually speaking to the congregation of the older generation on how they're supposed to handle their children, though they're now adults, in a way, it helps them on how they're supposed to handle it. So I think that's something that needs to be done by change makers and NGOs. They need to have some sort of storytelling, but they need to involve all generations in what they're trying to do. But cultural diplomacy is the way to go. Though it might not seem fast, like I said about Confucius, the Chinese philosopher, when he said that it might take 100 years to educate in terms of maybe trying to change the mindset. But I think because of the information technology we have, I think by 2030 we'll be able to reach that SDG goal.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, and for your word, really, for other change makers who are out there, and your word of recommendation to parents with young adults and some of the things which they can do. Right. Thank you so much for your response. Maybe to conclude on today's discussion, Ishmael, what would you recommend for young people and children? What small steps would you recommend for them to take? To our viewers, who are live now, who are viewing us live, and even those who are going to view a recording of this session, right? Now that they have been a part of this discussion, they have really listened to some of the insights that we've been sharing, right? So starting tomorrow, starting right now, what would you advise them to do? What small steps, what small actions would you recommend that they start taking?
I recommend them, I recommend children, youths, or anybody out there to, first of all, educate yourself more on children rights. Learn more about children rights. And after you do that, you take a step by, getting involved in your community, your local community. Be vocal. It doesn't really have to be with government. It can be with NGOs. It can even be with your school, because children rights are in every different aspect in your community, where it be education, where it be health, where it be the government system. That's what I recommend. And afterwards, you take on bigger steps and you continue to work your way up to the top and working more, and you don't stop. You don't give up. You continue fight. And one of the most important thing when you continue, you network with other youths, you network with other children right activists, and so on. That's my recommendation.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your recommendation. Thank you so much. I think our viewers out there have really learned a lot, really, on what they can do, and I'm happy that the first part of this discussion touched, especially from the sharing that we received from Blessing, touched on the mindset, changing that mindset, shifting, transforming that attitude, right? And we also identified, I think, from the sharing that was given by Blessing, that the existing gaps, the gaps within existing frameworks, their failure to address the needs of children with disabilities and also the impact of COVID-19. And we also talked about the small steps that young people, that children can, can take, the small steps that they can take, the actions that they can do. And the first being educating, right? Educating themselves and familiarizing themselves with children's rights, what they're all about. I've heard that the first part of this discussion also briefly touched on that, and it also touched on the existing frameworks, right? And we also talked about cultural diplomacy from the sharing that was made by Blessing, right, as a new approach to how we can really approach these sensitive issues and really the impact that we can realize from that. So I would say that we had a successful discussion tonight. And our viewers out there, those who are joining us, and those who are going to watch a recording of this session, I'd advise you, I'd request that you click that subscribe button and you stay engaged, you follow us, as we're going to have a build up on today's discussion next month, whereby we're going to be touching on some of the insights that we have realized in today's discussion and touch on some of the nuggets that were raised today. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that you really learned a lot and you had a successful session, and hope you enjoyed the rest of your day and night. Thank you so much, and all the best. Right. So I've ended the broadcast now. I'd request that we turn on our camera so that I can take a screenshot. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Ishmael, would you be able to turn your camera?